All right, we are live. Jay Worthy, welcome to the future of fitness, man.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be here, man.
It's a pleasure. Looking at your background, there's a lot of experience that we're gonna leverage here today with you. You said 25 years. I mean, life fitness operator. There's a lot. I'll let you tell that story. But most importantly, I'm really excited to get an update on MyZone. Like I was telling you prior, I had Emmett Williams on in 2020, which feels like that was pre-pandemic. That was like a whole different world. That was a different lifetime ago, right?
That's right.
So there's a lot to talk about. I know you guys have a big announcement coming up.
Yeah.
Really excited to cover that. And something that caught my eye, which we were just talking about pre-recording, is the term motivational technology. So I was saying, I saw that in some of your posts. I was like, ooh, tell me more. So, Jay, man, it's a pleasure to have you. Let's start with this. Give us a little of your background. There's a lot of it, and then we'll get into
Sure.
all the cool stuff with MyZone.
Yeah, like you say, I guess I'm more than 2.5 decades now in the global fitness industry, which is evidenced by the white beard for those that are watching this on YouTube. I guess I started fresh out of university. I did a Bachelor of Science degree working as a fitness instructor for free in an LA Fitness club. Actually, not the LA Fitness from the US, but the other version from the UK back in the very late 90s. And I was working for free just so that I could get my free gym membership with my Bachelor of Science degree long before those kind of fitness qualifications really came about. Training people, ironically, how to use Life Fitness equipment. And then about 18 years later, I became the president and CEO of Life Fitness and helped exit Life Fitness from Brunswick. So was fortunate to have a really stellar first half of my career. And then I've been doing bits and pieces, a little bit of consultancy, and I did some consultation stuff with MyZone about 18 months ago. And I've been a big fan of MyZone for more than 6 years. I love the product. I'm a MyZone junkie. I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm well and truly bitten by the MyZone bug. And when I had the opportunity to work with the team, I was just really intrigued by the future of the organization in a space that's become so busy and so fast moving. 13, 14 years ago when MyZone was first, concepted, if you like, by Dave Wright and the team, the world looks so different. The industry looks so different. Like you said, pre-COVID, it was like several movies ago now. And so just the opportunity really to take the reins, an unbelievable organization like MyZone and help steer it through a really interesting time in the industry was too big an opportunity to say no to.
What is it that you love as a consumer? What do you love about MyZone?
I think it's a great question. And actually, I asked myself that when I came in, because what you do when you land as a CEO in a new organization is you try to listen a lot, right? So you try to speak to a bunch of stakeholders, to the staff, to customers, to investors, anybody who'll share their thoughts. And what you're trying to do is kind of distill down the business into the core parts so you understand the recipe and what makes it tick. And so I was curious as I was looking at MyZone and asking myself the same questions that I was asking everybody else. And a common theme emerges, and I feel it strongly myself, which is it's the game. The game is the bit that really inspired me. I mean, I'm somebody who's got a strong background in strength and conditioning and physiology, right? So in principle, you could argue I maybe don't need MyZone, but actually the exact opposite is true. It's what's kept me consistent. And prior to that, I would have, periods where I would be working out really well and not so well. It's kind of the worst kept secret or the dirtiest secret in the industry, isn't it? We all work in the global health and fitness industry, and then sometimes we're the least healthy people in the world. Don't always practice what we preach. And so I was one of those executives. I was not sleeping well, working long hours, grinding hard, not necessarily working out as consistently as I could, not working out to a goal. And then along came MyZone, and I suddenly had a goal, right? I had to get my MEPs every month. It was simple. It didn't matter whether I had a busy schedule, whether I was traveling. I knew I had to get those 1,300 MEPs. And for those people that don't know MyZone, I think it's pretty well known across the industry. But for those that don't know, we take heart rate data and we convert it into a proprietary point system we call MyZone Effort Points, MEPs for short. And we correlated those MEPs to the World Health Organization guidelines for physical activity. So in essence, you need 1,300 a month to level up. And, that I think is the genius of MyZone is once you're on the game, you don't want to miss, because if you miss, you drop back down the ladder again. And so it's what's kept me consistent for more than 6 years, in fact, coming up on 7 years now with MyZone. And I think it's true of so many consumers that I've spoken to over the last year and a half.
Yeah. It's funny the little things that motivate us. I have an Aura. We'll talk about all the consumer data and the flood of, just the exhaustion I think that a lot of people have with how much data that's getting flown at them. But I didn't think I would be someone who pays attention to my steps all the time. Honestly, like I was like, it's like the activity score becomes really important to me. And, it almost becomes a problem, Jay. Like I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, this is, probably more of a therapy session that I'm doing with you now, but it's like, I look at my phone, I open my Aura, right? And I see like, okay, how did I sleep? What was my recovery? How's my HRV? I love all that data. But it's kind of like it's not, I don't think it's healthy
Right.
sometimes that's like the
Yeah.
first thing I check. And I don't think I'm alone. I think there's a lot of people who get really obsessed with their data and maybe there's just too much of it. So I don't know if there's even a question in here. I'm just kind of discussing what my experience is. But when you look at all, because you mentioned, you had, ultra human or you tested a lot of different things. Like how's MyZone from a consumer perspective different than all of that? How does it kind of cut through all that noise?
Well, I love the question. I love the open therapy session as well, because I'm like
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
the classic wearable junkie. I've had them all over the years. Every single one you can think of, you're probably the same. I've got a drawer
Yeah,
full of them in the house,
I
right?
do. I do.
And what's
It's actually in my other office.
right, exactly, and it's full. It's full. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's a bit like a museum of all of the wearables over the industry's progression, and it's really fascinating to see. What I think is interesting is I always got excited about a wearable. I would use it for a while, and then eventually I would get tuned in to the point that I kind of knew what it was going to tell me. It was a bit like when Fitbit came out, and we all were all told we had to do 10,000 steps. Once you worn a Fitbit for about 3 or 4 months, you kind of knew whether you'd had a 10,000 step day or not. You didn't need the device to tell you because you had a sense by that point of habitually what drove it and what didn't. And so when you had a sedentary day, you're like, oh, I know I'm going to be under today. Or if you were super active, you knew. So the value was diminishing over time. And I think that's true of so many wearables is at some point you just kind of get to the point where, like, okay, I know I've got a green recovery, or I know I've got a yellow recovery, or, I had alcohol last night, so I know it's going to tell me I'm red, my HRV is going to be low. So I think it's really, really interesting because I think ultimately every wearable right now is starting to fall foul of the same thing. And what you mentioned, you're absolutely not alone. So when I came into MyZone, we did the biggest research we've ever done in our history. We've been trading for more than 14 years, and we went out to thousands of consumers, some MyZoners and some non-MyZoners, some users of other wearables, some people who don't ever use wearables. And we just asked them a bunch of questions and we just listened, right? And some of them we went even deeper and we did some ethnographic stuff with them where we followed them for a few days and we tried to see and really dig underneath the skin of, in terms of the ecology of how they use stuff and how they interact with data around their day. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. We can't go into the detail right now because it would take us forever. But the headlines are really interesting. And I think what's real, which you mentioned, is that people were just overwhelmed. There's just too much data. And so you kind of get this now what, so what kind of mentality. Is like, okay, I've got all of this stuff, but what do I do with it? How does it change my behaviors? And I think for a lot of wearable users, it doesn't. And that's why in the wearable space, there's still quite a high degree of attrition. People will try something and then it will end up in their drawer. So, really, really long answer, but getting to the kind of the punchline, how's MyZone different? Well, when we got that research, we sat down as an executive team and we said, what are we going to do? The industry has moved on so much. So lots of people were telling us, oh man, Jay, if you want to stay in the game, you guys need HRV, you need, oxygen, you need skin temperature, you need a recovery and exercise preparedness. And we started listening to that and saying, wow, okay, geez, we better really take heed of that and start thinking. And we're talking to our manufacturer and we're exploring lots of different avenues of where we could go with sensor technology. And then we're looking at the data and we're looking at the research and we're saying, hold on, like, does the world really need another one of these brands doing this stuff? And, it's like the race to the smallest sensor, the race to the next best piece of data that you can have. Or is what the world really needs more motivation, more support in sticking at the habit and creating kind of long-lasting habitual change? So as a leadership team, we started talking about Well, if the industry is zagging, perhaps we should zig. And so, from a MyZone perspective, we're zigging. That's what we're doing. We're different because we like to talk about Motec, which is our way of talking about motivation technology. And so, we recently did a relaunch event where we talked a lot about what MyZone really stands for. And it's not just a few execs sitting in a room going, hey, we're going to change the business. It's actually come from our users. It's come from people like you and me who've been using the product for a long time, actually telling the organization, well, this is why MyZone matters to me. And so I think what makes MyZone different is we're much more focused on helping people create long lasting habitual change. And we can leverage data to do that. But the overwhelming bombarding of data is not the key. It's bringing everything back to a single metric, the MEPs, and just helping them get on their journey and stay committed when life's ups and downs are thrown at.
Here's the $1 trillion question, Jay, is what keeps people motivated to exercise and stay with it? Like, I think anybody who's been in this industry more than 30 minutes is like, that's the question. How do we keep people going in ourselves? Right. I mean, you and I were talking about, like, we all need motivation, even if we've been doing this for a very long time. I know you're a very active person. You do jujitsu, you do a lot of different things. Right. So yeah, like, how do we keep the, quote unquote, average consumer engaged?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's hard to kind of really generalize, right, and average out, because what you realize when you dig into this stuff is there's so many use cases, there's so many different kind of personas that everybody has a different kind of entry point and starting point and maybe needs. But some of the common trends that we've heard a lot from our research that we see a lot in MyZoners is some people really like the game. They like the competitive element of it. Tom Davies, who's our global marketing director, it's like an in joke. He's like 3 months ahead of me in MyZone status. And it's irritating me because I can never catch him. And he loves to hold that over me. But equally, I'm always saying to him, hey, be careful. You only need to slip up for 1 month and I'm on your heels.
Yeah. All you need to do is go on vacation. Yeah.
Right. So if you're super competitive, MyZone is there for you. Right. And so I think that's great. And we're actually working quite hard right now on kind of new elements to the games and new elements to the competition that can really leverage that. If you're a really competitive person, then we have that. For some people, it's the social, right? And so we've talked already. I've been in this industry for a long time. I've seen lots of organizations talk about social and community building in fitness. I actually don't think many companies do a very good job of it. And I think that MyZone can do a lot better, but we've actually built communities. So clubs that have MyZone in have got these little mini communities of MEPers, right? These MyZoners that are just, if they don't click in with their red belt on, it's almost like the workout didn't happen, right? And so we have a real track record of building these micro communities within club chains. And so for those people that want that social connection, that ability to connect with others, MyZone's got that as well. And so I think there's a really strong, having been an operator before, I think there's a really strong angle there, which is, if you've got a club with 1,000 members, 2,000, 5,000 members, how do you create that stickiness between them and the brand? I think the secret answer, the ingredient is you create that stickiness between each of them, not them and the brand. And that in turn creates a stickiness with the brand, with the club. And then beyond that, I think for me, the MEPs are just incredibly powerful because it's simple. And as we just talked about a little while ago, I just think in a world that's becoming increasingly data heavy, I think there's power in a single currency, a single unifying metric that allows me to go do jits and have some roles, and you go to play golf and somebody else to go play, football or whatever. And we're just getting MEPs. So it doesn't really matter what we're doing. We're all on the same journey. And I think that's really powerful. And then the final thing I think that's really important, and I've learned this over my career in these kind of leadership roles, is people do their best work when they know where they're going. They understand the direction of travel. They understand the journey and the map. And they tend to do their worst work. And I've had some success with this, and I've had some poor results when I've not got this right in leadership roles. But if you're not really clear on where the organization is going or what the goal is, then people tend to get lost and they become directionless. And I think the same thing is true of behavior change. I think if people want to get active and live a healthier life and stay that way, They need to know where they are and how they're progressing. And that's where I think we've done a really nice job with the status levels. And we've recently done a relaunch of that whole kind of visualization to really bring it out and allow people to celebrate how far they've come on the journey, reflect back on that, and then also see, okay, what's the next rung on the ladder that I can get to?
Maybe that's a really good point. And maybe we should take a step back because I haven't experienced MyZone in a very long time. Like what is the current consumer experience? Like they join a gym, they get the hardware, they sign up for an app, is it take the wearable, data in that they already have? Like, yeah, give us an update. What does it all look like
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah. So we started out making heart rate wearables, right? That's at the same time we did that, the business created MEPs and it had an app experience to go with it. The app experience has evolved so much. Our predominant model is we promote our products and our Motec through gym partners. So we partner with gym operators rather than just trying to do it all ourselves direct to consumer. We do have some direct to consumer business, but the majority of our business is partnering with gym operators. And so in that regard, there's different models, but for the most part, when a consumer goes into a club that is a MyZone club and they join, they're given the opportunity to buy a device. And we have a range of devices. And we have our ECG chest belt. It used to be called MZ3. We relaunched it recently. It's now called MyZone Max. And that is a pure play heart rate device on the chest. It is a really, really, really strong product. It's got strong reputation for reliability, an insane battery life that lasts months and months and months, which in the age of modern consumer tech is really, really, really powerful. Max is 50% smaller than MZ3 was. It's 25% lighter than the previous model. So we've really kind of worked hard to make that more comfortable. We also have Switch, and Switch is a dual product. So it has both ECG and PPG. PPG being the technology that is used on the wrist and on the biceps to create a heart rate reading. And so depending on where you use it, hence the name Switch, you can get the best there. We also have a product called MyZone 1. MyZone 1 used to be called MZ1. MyZone, an entry-level product that's really perfect for boutique studios. And so if the use case is, hey, I run a boutique studio and I want to have 20 belts and I want people to be able to put a belt on, have a great experience in the club, see their heart rate on a screen, but I don't really need them to be able to use that device when they're walking or running or anywhere else, then MyZone 1 is perfect for that. And then I think actually most excitingly of all, 2 years ago, we launched a product called MZ Open. And in November of this year, at the start of November, we launched a product called MyZone Go, which is our reinvention of MZ Open. And the simplest way to describe that, Eric, is it's our smartwatch play, but it's our kind of platform agnostic play. So our view is, there are 220 million Apple Watch wearers in the world, and the growth rate on Apple Watch sales is double-digit CAGR. So there's 220 million people around the world already wearing Apple Watches, and that's growing double digits. There are 25 to 35 million Samsung Galaxy Watch users selling at a rate of about 5 million watches a quarter based on the data that we've seen. And then think about all the other Android watches that are out there. So non-Samsung branded Android watches. We estimate that total pool is somewhere close to about 500 users. And those people, some of them are members of health clubs, but some of them are not. Some of them are members of HVLP clubs, some of them are not. And so if you think about, you said something to me, which I love, about helping the industry kind of go where the puck's going to be. This is a case of rising tide raises all ships. There are millions and millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people out there who are not currently working out in clubs around the world in our industry, but they might have a smartwatch on their wrist. That smartwatch has PPG. That PPG can create a heart rate reading. We take that heart rate reading, we turn it into MEPs, and they're in the game. Once they're in the game, we can help signpost them to clubs. We can help grow the industry. And so we are super excited about MyZone Go because we think it's the lowest friction way to bring people into our amazing industry.
So as a consumer, do you need MyZone hardware, or can you have, like a Garmin or an Apple? Like what do you actually require from MyZone?
We're not connected with Garmin right now, but we are. You
Okay.
essentially, if you have an Apple Watch, any kind of Android smartwatch, so a Samsung would be a good example, but there are obviously tons of other brands out there doing Android operating system smartwatches, or a MyZone device, then you can join the MyZone ecosystem and benefit from our Motec and get into the game. And that for me is probably the most exciting element of MyZone Go, is that it's just completely removed the friction. So historically, you had to buy a MyZone device. And of course, we believe MyZone devices are great. And we think that Max and Switch are really powerful tools to help people create lasting habits, create lasting lifestyle change, and drive their longevity. But the important thing is, if they require those things, then we've created a barrier. And so MyZone Go is all about removing the friction. And so it's as simple as going into one of our partner clubs, seeing a QR code on the screen or on a poster or on a sales asset in the club, scanning it, creating an account, and you're off to the races. You go do a workout and you've caught your first MEPs. And I would say you've caught the MyZone bug, because I think once somebody does one workout and gets their MEPs, they're in the game. And actually, one of the things that we did earlier on this year is, when I came on board, I felt really uncomfortable that the first time you sign up and create an account on MyZone, you had no status. And I felt like, well, that's not really very inclusive. So you had to wait a whole month until you got 1,300 MEPs, and you would go from no status to iron. And so we created a new status tier called Copper. And Copper is for anybody who's done their first workout. So you do one workout, we're ringing the bell and we're celebrating with you, and you've got Copper status, you're in the club. Next stop, iron, and you're off to the races. And so that's something that we're super interested and excited about, because we think that we've removed all this friction from the system. And so our partner clubs can just help people start tracking their workout from literally day one. No hardware required, no hard sell. You've already joined the club membership. And so we're supporting our gym partners by saying, hey, you can offer a free trial to MyZone Go. They just scan on the QR code and away they go. And then we handle all of the renewal, so that the club doesn't have to get involved in administration. And we listened to club operators, and they told us, we don't want to be selling wearables. We want to be working on memberships, giving great service to our customers. It's not a core skill of ours to be selling wearable technology. So we're taking that pressure away.
Is there are you guys or any of your partners offering like tangible rewards and incentives? Like, hey, you get to this level, you get, I don't know, a free t-shirt, right? Or maybe, whatever, smoothie at the smoothie bar. Like, what have you seen in that perspective?
Yeah, we've seen a few. There's a few good examples of that. I know UFC Gym, some of their locations have done a really nice job of that, and there are other examples around the world, but it's not common yet, which I think is quite surprising. And so one of the things that we're working on as a team is with our technology to try and enable that more. And even on our own level, we want to celebrate status more. So, if we were being hypercritical of ourselves historically, if you were using MyZone and you went from, say, you secured platinum status or you secure gold status, something to celebrate. You were secure Hall of Fame status. It's an incredible achievement, incredible consistency. And it almost happened without any kind of ceremony or event in the app. You would do a workout, one day you're status A and the next day you're status B. And that felt kind of underwhelming and almost clutching defeat from the arms of victory. And so we've worked really hard to bring that to life in the app and say, okay, it deserves to be celebrated, make it easier for you to share on socials, but also bring it to life within the app experience that, great job, you just achieved Hall of Fame status and also helping to start bring out where you sit in the overall ecosystem. So if you've got a streak of a certain number of workouts, maybe it's in the top 3% of all MyZoners, and wouldn't you love to know that? And how cool would that be? And it's another kind of game and comparison point as well. So I think there's more to be done on that front, Eric, and we're partnering all the time with gym operators to say what more can we do. And there's a correlation as well. So we work with Dr. Paul Bedford, and we've also started working with a behavioral science advisor, which you may have seen, Heather, and she's amazing. And we're really leaning into the motivational science behind what MyZone is about, and also the correlation with length of stay. And I know, having been a CEO of a gym chain that LTV is everything, right? If you can get every single member to stay just 1 month more, it's transformational to the bottom line. And we know from our data that MyZoners on average stay 3 months longer than non-MyZoners. It's like the best kept secret of MyZone. So we're just trying to put that out there so that people can understand that if you get your members using MyZone early on in their journey, they will stay 3 months longer on average than non-MyZoners. That's a game changer. If I was a CEO, I would be picking, I know it sounds like a hard sales pitch, but I genuinely would. I'd be picking up the phone saying, oh, this is kind of easy money, right? What a great way to drive longevity of your members, lifetime value, stickiness with the customer. It's like a win-win. So we're really leaning in hard to that kind of motivation and behavioral science element to MyZone.
Yeah, the behavioral science. I know it's not your field of expertise. That's why you hired someone to oversee it. But I'm curious to get you. I'm sure you think about it like this whole category. Like I distinctly remember I was doing a gravel race this summer, and in one of the hardest parts of the climb, they had little signs that keep you motivated. You know, it was like, "Hey, pain is temporary, Strava is forever." And I laughed. It made me laugh. I was really hurting at that point, but that made me laugh. And then I think about like my tonal. I use tonal. It gives me streaks, right? And it actually does motivate me. I get bummed when I miss a streak, and there's all this gamification happening. What is it about human psyche and our evolution that makes us so drawn to that? Like, how does that even just a number, a random number we get from an app or, something like that. It's so motivating. Like, what do you think that is?
I'm definitely getting way, way, way out of my wheelhouse here, but I would say, I spent a bit of time.
Yeah, me too. It's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll just go for it, see where we go. But I started spending, more time with Dr. Heather McKee, who's our behavioral science advisor, who's wicked smart, and just bringing so much rich kind of context and insight to what we're doing. And it's, I think for me, I think probably one of the things is we're kind of digging into that feeling of belonging, wanting to be part of something. I think that's one of the things. And I think everybody also likes to feel good. So it's that enhanced kind of dopamine hit that you get when something really, really good happens. And so she's teaching us all the time, and we're learning, and we do, webinars internally with our team and spending time with our tech team so that the product folks that are actually building the product are being guided by Heather, knowing what will actually drive, based on the literature, what will drive lasting behavior change. And I don't profess to understand it, but I think it's powerful. And for one, as MyZone, we're leaning into it because we think it's differentiating, and we think it's what the industry needs. There's so many quick hits out there, which are kind of snake oil, right? And there's a bunch of really great people in the industry who just want to help people live happier, healthier lives. And we think this kind of behavioral and motivational science, this MoTech focus, is really going to help, bring a spotlight to that.
So describe if you talk to somebody on a plane and you're like, yeah, I do motivational technology. Describe that. How do you tell that to a layperson?
Yeah,
as a category.
Yeah, it's a good test for me, right? So the team are going to be listening now and seeing how well I do. But I think as a category, they'll score me at the end. But I think in practice, what we're talking about is we help people create lasting lifestyle change that helps them live a healthier, happier life. We do that through a combination of wearable technology, which gives heart rate data, and a single currency, which is MyZone effort points. And then we essentially have a game in the app that you play, which requires you to be active more often than you're not. And if you stay active more often than you're not, you'll continue to progress in the game. And then the bit that gets really exciting, which you already touched on, is the more you stay in the game, the more you're going to get back.
I love it. I know you have a big announcement coming up, and by the time this publishes, have we covered that, or is there something else that's going to be unveiled soon?
We've covered most of it. So the big announcement for us is all about how the brand shows up. We historically were a business that was really just selling devices. And what we've done is really crystallized the value that we offer to consumers. and the value that we offer to gym partners. And that showed up or shows up at the launch event in terms of the brand, the look and the feel, the product lineup. And I think at the epicenter of that for us is the work that we're doing with Heather and showcasing that real focus on Motec. And then right at the very, very core at the nucleus is MyZone Go, which is essentially democratizing Motec. It's saying, if you've got a wearable already, we're not going to try and force one of ours on you. Let's leverage the technology you already have on your wrist, and let's bring you into the MyZone ecosystem and get you into the game. And then, we can go from there. And so that was the heart of what we believe. And that's really set the pace for the organization going forward. And then,
Yeah,
beyond
that's
that,
awesome,
you
man. I
talked
mean,
yeah, sorry, I was going to say, you talked about Garmin, and we touched on Whoop and we touched on Aura Ring. But if you actually start to expand your horizons and say, really imagine how many devices are out there that currently are capturing heart rate, and what can we do with those? How can we harness that data? How can we harness those users' profiles to help them have a better, longer lasting behavior change experience? That's what gets me really excited.
which is, thank you for that. It's a really nice segue into the next tremendously large topic I want to cover with you, which is I don't let anybody get off the show anymore without talking about artificial intelligence. It's, with all the data that you guys have flowing in and the promise of, hyper personalization through artificial intelligence, like, how much focus, how do I ask this question? What are your expectations of artificial intelligence within the sphere of MyZone over the next 5 years? It's impossible to predict, right? So I wouldn't, no one's going to hold you to it, but how big is the focus? What are you guys thinking it could mean for you, your company, your consumers, your partners in a picture?
Yeah. I think it's going to change our world, right? I mean, it's not just going to change our industry; it's already changing our world. And I'm a father of 5, and we talk about it as a family all the time because my youngest daughter Elizabeth is 4, my oldest daughter Scarlett is 19. So I've got quite the spread, and they're at different stages. So the world for Scarlett with AI is going to look quite different to the world for Elizabeth, and then their kids, it's a whole different world altogether. It's coming. It's going to change our world. In my mind, we have to embrace it. Organizationally at MyZone, we're excited about the possibility of AI for 2 reasons, really. One is we already talked about data overwhelm. So there is a lot of health data out there. We're connected with Apple Health and Google Health. So there's data available to us to help augment a user's experience. We don't leverage that today, but we could leverage that in the future. And AI has a real powerful capability to do that. And therefore, it's like, how do you harness large quantities of data and give really clear advice? And then the other is that I think the problem that wearables in general have today is this data overwhelm. And I think AI is one of the potential solutions that simplifies that, which is consistent with what we believe MyZone should be all about, which is anchoring everything to a single kind of metric and point of view. And we think that AI is going to really help us do that. And so we're already working on some really exciting projects that will help us leverage AI through coaching, right, to augment a user's experience should they want to have it. And for me, I started out my career as a fitness instructor, as a personal trainer. It's not about replacing humans in my mind. It's about augmenting them and helping them bring to life the data and make sure that programming and interventions and support are really, really effective. And so I think it's coming. We're super excited about it. And we think it sits really well in the space that we love. MyZone equals Motec and effort is rewarded. And they're the kind of the 2 tenets, if you like, of MyZone. The 2 pillars of MyZone is everything goes down to a single metric and effort is rewarded. Whatever effort you do is rewarded. And so I think that AI is going to help us continue to do that and continue to simplify the world that is overwhelmed by data and tracking.
Yeah, it's, I'm sure you have these conversations internally too, but I work with, do some consulting work for Dr. Andy Galpin's group and Vitality Blueprint, which is performance biomarkers, blood work, stuff like that. And, there's there's competition in the market, right? There's a lot of that now. People are interested in the personalization of it. And, in a recent conversation I had with some of the leadership team, we're like, yeah, we have all this competition, but our real competition is artificial intelligence, right? Like that's, in 2 to 3 years, there's a window where I think we have of a lot of, this is just me speaking, where like a lot of this stuff is going to be consumed. Like what's going to stop ChatGPT from having a health doctor, specifically within their platform, right? Or you could build your own or things like that. So it's an odd time to be alive, man. I'm fully believing that, like, I don't think there's ever been a time like this where it's like there's excitement and there's anxiety and there's, potential, but there's also catastrophic possibilities,
Yeah.
right? Of all these things. And we're just kind of on for the ride. Like that's it. Like we're in, like you can't get off this car. Right.
Well, and I think you said it so well, like none of us know, right? This is unprecedented in human history. We've never faced the idea of technology being this sophisticated that it can do and achieve more than anybody else in human history combined, right? And it is remarkable. It's remarkable to think of our children and our children's children and the power and the knowledge that they have instantly at their fingertips. And you see it with I see it with my youngest children. They have instant access to ChatGPT and Siri, and they already have access to the world's knowledge. And when we were kids, we didn't. We had, our parents were buying Encyclopedia Britannica, right, from door to door salespeople. The rate of change that society has seen in the last 50 years is unbelievable. The rate of change that we're going to see in the next 10 is going to make that look like it was 100 years, I think. And so none of us know. Like you say, we're all along for the ride. I kind of fall personally, and it's just an N of one, right? But just personally, as a dad, as a business leader, and as a human, I think I just fall on the side of it's coming, whether we want it to or not. That the horse has left the stable, right? The fox is in the hen house. So I think it's too late to be. It's too late to be pontificating on whether we should have let it get this far. It already has, and so in my mind, it's like, how do we leverage this for the greater good of humanity? What are the things that we can do to leverage this technology to make life better, healthier, happier, more sustainable for the planet? So that's what I focus on when I think about AI. And so that manifests itself at MyZone around, okay, what is the experience that we're trying to create? How are we helping people create lasting behavior change? And how can AI help us do that even more effectively so that we can help more people?
Well, it's the way you guys are addressing it's a noble pursuit, right? And there's a lot of people who may not have the same
Yeah,
motivations as you guys do.
for
One of the
sure.
things that I talk about on the show too is a lot of executives are trying to figure out there's an overwhelm with artificial intelligence where it comes into play of like, we know we need to be using it. We just don't know how, right? Like where's the best application of it? So if you're giving advice to other executives, is there and little things like Chris Crater was here from ACAC and we talked about, he just created an internal SOP. They train their own GPT. So it's like, hey, you want to know what the business hours are or what the rest code is or whatever. It's just they can punch it in, it has all the SOPs already in there, right? Standard operating procedures. Like any little things like that you would give advice or insights that's been useful for you and your organization that other executives could use as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I think generally I come from a position, as you just heard, of encouraging it. So we just did a survey with our team. We're not a huge team, but we've got folks all around the world, in the US, in Australia, in Europe. And so we reached out to everybody and just to try and get a lay of the land. And what showed up is more than 2/3 of the business were using AI in some form on a daily basis, right? So it's already alive in the business. And so I'm not sure whether I'd be in a position to give advice because we're all just learning this for the first time. But what I took from that was it's happening. And so what we need to do is be thoughtful about how does it show up in the business? Are we helping educate and guide our teams on an AI usage? So even just simple things like, okay, if 2/3 of the employees around the world are already utilizing AI, what proprietary confidential information is already being uploaded into ChatGPT or other things on a daily basis? And so can we create some guidelines for the team on what is and isn't sensible? It's a bit like, 10 or 15 years ago, we didn't know much about cybersecurity. Now we always train our teams on, okay, be aware of these things because there are people out there trying to hack and get information from you or the business. And so, it falls into that domain. It's a bit boring, but it's also real. It's a real threat to the organization. And so it's one that we need to to contemplate, particularly as you think about kind of proprietary corporate technology or strategy. So that's one thing that we're thinking of. But the other is the exciting side. That's the kind of the scary side of how it might be leveraged for kind of immoral reasons, like you said. But the positive side is how much amplification we might get from talent. Like if we've got great talent in the organization, we're really focused on having great people. And then we could, how much can they be amplified, their effects be amplified by leveraging AI to do some of the tasks that they might normally have done themselves, which would take them time, and how we can accelerate and amplify their impact by giving them access to these incredible tools. So they're the things that I think are really interesting. And then even I just came off a call with our CTO, and he's Vahid Zadeh, he's formerly of Whoop. He's an absolute genius, fantastic guy, a real privilege to work with. And he's a data guy, right? He loves data, and he dives into the data, and we've got our dashboards, our Snowflake data, and he's like a mad scientist. He's like, oh, look at this stuff that I found, and it's amazing, right? But I said to him, hey, let's get some AI working on this, right? I kind of need you building stuff, right? It's great that you're excited about this, but is it the best use of you? You can set the parameters, you can set the projects, but how do we leverage this amazing new technology so that we can go to bed and AI will just keep cranking out the numbers and come back to us the next day with analysis? And that for me, I think is exciting. And I do genuinely, but maybe I'm naive and history will judge me on this one way or the other, but I don't think AI will fully replace as many roles as people think it will. I think it will mean that people's roles can be expanded and their impact can be expanded because we can start to train AI to work for us. So one person can have 3 or 4 AI assistants doing work for them and amplify their impact. So it should, in my mind, maybe I'm overly romantic or naive, but it should amplify human intelligence in my mind.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Either that or it's going to be Terminator. So
The last
one of the
Yeah, right. Yeah. I know. It's either Utopia or what was it?
Yeah.
Skynet? Yeah, Skynet.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question I always ask here, Jay, is, what's a challenge that you need help with as an industry? How can we help you hiring, looking for certain positions? Or are you trying to crack a problem? Do you need specific type of partnerships? Like, if people are going to reach out, what would you like to hear from them about?
Yeah, so it's a few things, I think. I think our industry has got some way to go on collaboration. I think it can be a little tribal, and we may not always want to share and be open and collaborate to grow the industry. And I think that has to change. So I genuinely buy into this notion of a rising tide raises all ships. And, I'd love to meet with the CEO of Whoop and talk about how Whoop plus MyZone can mean more people living healthier, longer lives. And I don't see why that conversation couldn't happen. The same with Polar and Garmin and Android and Apple. And so, for me, that's the real opportunity, is that we kind of forget our tribal allegiances and start to figure out how we genuinely help the industry grow. So that's one thing that I think I'd love to see more of. And the other is I want to work with partners that are really interested in measuring the impact of MoTech. So if you're interested in having MoTech in your facility and really looking at the data and saying, okay, do these members stay longer? Do they spend more money? Do they refer more friends? Do they visit more times? Do they spend more on coffee? And, let's do that, because I think for us, we're data hungry and we're keen to build more evidence into what we do in the industry to drive our credibility collectively, not just at MyZone. And so anybody who's interested in that side of things should definitely reach out.
Awesome, man. And if people do want to reach out, is there a specific place you want them to go? Do you want them to follow you on LinkedIn? Is there email, website? Yeah, where would you direct them?
I am wide open and always willing to chat. LinkedIn's good. And then email is j.worthy@myzone.org. And so, yeah, hit me up and let's have a conversation.
Yeah, man. Jay, this is great. It was great to hear what you guys are up to, your insights on artificial intelligence. I'm sure it's, front and center for what you guys do there at MyZone. So it's always helpful, I think. Speaking openly about it, especially, a lot of people have excitement and concerns, and I think we just need to talk about it more because no one really knows what they're doing. So that's the thing, right?
That's
right. It's been awesome, man. Thank you for doing this, ladies and gentlemen. Jay Worthy.
Thanks, Eric.